another delicate balance is striking the right proportions of being the squeaky wheel and also like being quiet.
Correct.
And choosing your time to speak up.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to think that I offer a specific brand of what I do that somebody else maybe doesn't have.
Yeah.
And it's fun for me when I have people say like, oh, I didn't know you played stuff like that. Yeah, I don't get to break the death metal stuff out a lot, like at the country gig or like, hey, I thought of you as like this kind of jazz guitar, like from doing Lyle's stuff. And it's like, well, was just one of those things that I tucked in the bag from being 18 and wanting to tackle everything very like I conquered this. I put my flag in this technique and then I moved on, so.
Hey everybody, welcome again to the Studio 101 Recording Podcast. My name is Brad Phillips. Our special guest on this podcast today is Mr. Rhett Smith. Rhett, thank you for dropping in and hanging out with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Rhett has kind of recently moved back to the Greenville, South Carolina area. Native South Carolinian.
Oh yeah.
That kind of lived in Nashville for a little while. We'll let you tell the whole timeline and story. But man, so thankful that you're here to give us some time to chat. The first time we were able to meet in person.
Yeah.
And we have some mutual friends and network connections in the music industry that we realized we kind of had some of those connections and stuff. And
I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you thinking of me and inviting me out. You got a great spot. And it's really cool to know there's stuff like this in our backyard, I
appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. So you grew up in Clemson area originally, kind of where you're from?
Pendleton, South Carolina.
The
Born
Bulldogs.
and raised. Yeah,
the Bulldogs.
I did go to Daniel High School.
Okay,
so
that was
a Lion.
That was a different tier. That's a different level.
Yeah.
So,
I was from Pendleton. My mom's family was from Greenville, and Dad's family was from Anderson, and I think that just made a nice little in between spot.
Yep.
So
yeah, good deal.
Yeah.
So you've been playing guitar probably since you were 12 or 13 years old?
Yeah.
Kind of when you first started really getting into guitar.
That was it, man. If I was good, my dad would let me stay up late and watch Austin City Limits with him.
Nice.
On a Saturday night.
Yeah.
And so one day we were watching, I'm pretty sure it was Pure Prairie League, or maybe it was just Vince, but we were watching Vince and there was like a red Stratocaster on stage. And my dad was like, you see that? That's a Fender Stratocaster. Those are the coolest guitars.
Yeah. And
I was probably like, I don't know, 8 or 9.
Right.
And I decided, man, I need a Fender Stratocaster.
Yep.
And, I stayed on them for a good 3 or 4 years. And my grandfather, this is a legendary quote in our family, but evidently told my mom and dad, if you're not going to buy him a guitar, I will. And he kind of forced their hand a little bit. So
love it.
I got a red Ibanez kind of Strat copy as my first guitar, probably 10 or 11. When you're that age, you just want to go roll around in the dirt and play video games and be outside and hit stuff with sticks or whatever.
Sure.
I steadily attended guitar lessons. The stuff I was listening to was all kind of inspired by like the morning ride to school with my dad. We'd be listening to Rock 101, which, I can say that here and what that is.
Exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
But so growing up listening to classic rock or Stevie Ray Vaughan and stuff like that and Jimi Hendrix, and then you go into your first guitar lesson and you say, I want to do that. And they say, well, all right, this is going to be a tough first lesson for you, but there's these things called bar chords.
Oh my gosh.
And that's a day ruiner for a 10-year-old wanting to start to play. So I kept going, but I really caught the bug probably like 12 or 13.
Yep.
And that's really when it started, I would say.
Yeah. Same here, man. I love to hear the story of how guitar players kind of got into it. 'Cause I think I mowed grass for an entire summer.
Yeah.
And there was a store in Spartanburg called Smith Music, and my dad's deal with me was if I made a certain amount of money during the summer, that I could go buy I bought a red Squire 2,
Mm-hmm.
Korean made
Yep.
Strat, which is hanging on the wall over here, which I reliced and redid and probably 3 times, you know.
Yeah.
And but my most memorable moment was I think at 16 we were at the guitar show in Spartanburg,
Mm-hmm.
which was at Heron Circle at the time. For anyone who's listening in the area, this was probably mid 90s, I guess. And we ran into a guy that had a Sunburst Telly,
Mm-hmm.
American made 92 model. It had factory blemishes on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you pick the guitar up, there's these dimples in the clear finish,
Mm-hmm.
like it had been hit with a hammer or dropped or something.
Yeah.
And he had that guitar for $500. So my dad put up half, I put up half, and I still have that guitar in the case sitting right over there. And it has been played. It's been played for 25 years, dude, like all over the place. And it's just those memories for a guitar player, like, you know, your first guitar or your special guitar, or all those things. It's a thing, right?
It absolutely is. And sometimes it's driven by whatever caught your eye as a kid, you know,
Yep.
or you were inspired by, or you just thought that guy looked so cool with
Mhm.
that thing. And then sometimes it's that red Squire too, where it's like, that's what I got.
Right.
And that made it become the coolest thing in the world to me.
That's right.
And you said a telly, though. You know, the telly bug does not bite everyone,
Mm-hmm.
but if you get bit, it never goes away.
Yeah,
You know, it's
well-
like I got guys that to this day hate tellies, and I hated tellies until I got one,
Right.
and I like got the bug, and then it was just like no looking back.
Right. Well, I was telling you earlier that I was at Belmont. I did the music business program there.
Yeah.
I was mainly playing live and playing in the studios
Mm-hmm.
more than like record company operations. You know?
Yeah, sure.
But like, so the Brent Mason thing was incredibly popular, like when I was living in Nashville. And so I talked Joe Glazer into giving me the closest copy to the Mason setup as humanly possible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Brent and Joe had kind of the patent on his 3 pickup system with the switch and all
the blender knob and
all that stuff. So I went to Joe and I was like, hey man, like, I only got one guitar. I was
Mhm.
like, I really don't have the money to go buy a Les Paul and, you know, buy another Strat, you know, and add to my collection. I really didn't have the money at the time, but all the gigs I was playing was like, you know, I needed a little bit of a humbucker thing on stage sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I needed a little bit of that out of phase Strat-y thing, you know, but I wanted it in one guitar. So Joe was like, I'll hook you up, man. So he redid my entire telly. It's exactly the same to this very day. And there's one, I don't have the 3 knobs
Mm-hmm.
like the Mason telly, but I do have the blend knob.
Yeah.
And he threw in a switch that I can turn on the humbucker basically in any position.
Awesome.
And, you know, so
I got to see it now.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
we can talk about that when we get done. But that kind of stuff is, you know, and when you're a college kid trying to make the most of your dollar, you know, you're getting paid $100 to go play a show downtown
Yeah,
Nashville
sure.
or whatever. Trying to maximize my guitar and my tone and all that stuff, you know, was something that was, you know, it was needed at that time.
I had a big Brent phase. You know, he's actually what brought me to Nashville. I used to take lessons from Brent.
No way. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I guess I was 18. You know, I was getting ready to go to college, and
Right.
it was expensive as all get out. But I'd go to Nashville, and
Yeah.
I'd stay at a friend's house, a family friend, and I'd go take my guitar lesson from him.
Mhm.
And he taught me a bunch of, you know, Masonisms, those just chop based kind of playing, whether I, you know, being that age and like being able to play is like having the keys to a really fast car and you can't drive that well.
For
It's
sure.
like you can just turn it on and put the pedal to the metal, but you just got no clue.
Yeah.
And he kind of put that Nashville bug in my head, like, hey, you want to work?
Yeah.
If you want to do this,
Gotcha.
that's what everybody asks. How do I get to do what you do?
Mhm.
It's like, well, the first step, you got to be here.
Right.
And so I started looking at Belmont too.
Right.
But my parents had a bit of a disagreement with me about going somewhere for college that costs a lot of money when you don't go to high school that's free,
Gotcha.
We had a bit of a disagreement. So I didn't go, but I definitely spent a lot of my kind of formative guitar years going back and forth.
Yeah. Well, the education part of guitar and music industry, music business, it's a topic that we've hit on here with our podcast over the last year and a half, I guess. But now you did do some jazz guitar college stuff, right?
Yeah.
So talk a little bit, for people who are listening, talk a little bit about that shift, kind of doing some of the college-based guitar stuff, and then move. We'll talk about the live touring stuff later. But
so I guess when I was probably, when you play music, you get such a wider group of friends than your parents wish you had. And I always had friends that would be 2 or 3 years older than me that played.
Mm-hmm.
But one, because I wanted to play with the best guys.
Yeah.
And nobody, I had bands in high school and stuff, but the good dudes were always like older.
Right.
And
more seasoned.
Exactly. Yeah. But like an 18 or 19-year-old to a 15 or 16-year-old to your parents is like terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
So I started playing with these like metal bands, and that already terrified my parents. But so by the time I got to be a senior in high school, I was cutting school on Monday and Friday maybe and going away to play gigs 3 or 4 days in a row on the weekend and coming back. And I wanted to go to all these music schools. I'd started taking lessons from Steve Watson over here in Greenville, Watson Wood Music, who for
Mr.
anyone,
Magnum PI.
Exactly, dude.
Hill Street Blues.
Yep. And he, he's a very regimented. He went to Miami. Mm-hmm. He's like a Berkeley book, by the book kind of guy.
Correct.
And I was the kid with the Ferrari, So it was like I didn't want to go sight read from the first page of the Berkeley book. I was like, just show me how to do the chops.
Yeah. I don't want to play blue bossa.
Right. Dude, first lesson, first day, blue bossa. Yeah. And it's like, but I'm plugged into his Dumble, his overdrive special sitting there, a Mark II C Plus and all this stuff. But, so I was like having a miserable time over there. I was like, just show me how to do the thing. Like do like what Brent does and just show me how to burn it down. I can already do it. Just show me where to put them kind of, I didn't have that level of motivation to kind of know the inner workings of the harmony behind it.
Yeah.
And it just didn't work out. I was having too hard of a time with him. And like I said, I was cutting school a couple times a week or whatever. That was the worst thing that ever happened. Like when you're a kid and you're driving yourself to school and you like hit your blinker and you get in that turn in lane and traffic kind of slows down. You don't have to turn in. Like there's nothing that's really making you do that. And the second I figured that out, it was just all over. I just drove on by, went home, listened to some records, played guitar. So that was at odds with this thing of wanting to go to the Thornton School of Music or Miami or Belmont or Berkeley. I went and looked at all these amazing music schools, and it's hard to get your parents to want to put that up if you're not going.
Yeah, if you're not attending the classes. Yeah.
But very luckily, they want you there if you can play.
Mm-hmm.
And I had good test scores, even if I wasn't showing up. I did well on my ACT and my SAT. So I got into Clemson on like a ride, and they basically forced you to go into a concentration of either classical guitar or jazz guitar. And around the same time, I had met this guy named Zach Bingham. Do you know Zach?
I don't think I do.
He is an amazing guitar player, and he lives in Columbia.
Okay.
And I think he does a podcast as well and works out of a studio down there a good bit. But I saw Zach went to the Fine Arts Center and studied with Steve.
Okay.
But I'd never seen someone just burn through the changes like that guy. Just Pat Martino on steroids kind of thing. And I thought I was the big fish in the small pond at the time. And he absolutely melted my brain.
Wow.
Like right out of my ear holes. I just was like, this is the craziest thing in the world. And that kind of lit the fire that, hey, maybe I need to put some more time into this jazz guitar thing.
Kind of developing the craft and all that stuff that goes with it.
Totally. So having to go to school and kind of follow these very regimented things, even if I had disagreements with attending and how the classes worked at the time. So the way it worked, at Clemson, you go into the performing arts degree. That's kind of the overarching umbrella. And then within that, you can choose a concentration. And so if the concentration is voice, maybe you have a vocal advisor or teacher and you take your vocal lessons and you work in these ensembles as a vocalist. But at the time in its infancy, me being a guitar major under the performing arts thing kind of meant that I went and I took a guitar lesson from this guy that I really didn't like once a week.
Yeah.
And that guy really didn't like me either. And we were at odds from the time that we both taught at the same music store, private lessons. So it's like, I go from being a 17, 18-year-old kid teaching lessons out of Seneca, and the other guitar teacher that's now the guy at Clemson who's my teacher that I was like, I don't even like that guy. He's not any good,
Wow.
So he was my teacher. So I had a rough time, but I still learned a lot. But I also started, kind of getting some opportunities. My dad and I went to a clinic where we went and saw Paul Reed Smith speak, and that kind of led to some opportunities. And at the time, I was pretty convinced that they're not going to be waiting for me if I finish a degree. So I kind of bailed on my jazz guitar thing the second I got a chance. So
I got you. Well, that's a little bit of a lot of musicians' stories about starting in that path.
Sure.
And then getting, opportunities to go full time into the career that you were kind of shooting for anyway,
Yeah.
And so what year did you end up kind of moving to do the Nashville thing from Greenville or Clemson?
That would have been probably 2017.
Gotcha. And you moved to town to live.
Yeah. And I honestly, I couldn't have done it if it wasn't for a good friend of mine, Michael Meckling. I don't know if you know him, but he runs a studio in town called 4115.
Okay.
And I don't know if he still does. He used to work with Reed Shippen a lot.
Oh, yeah.
But at the time, he was an audio engineering major at Clemson. He went before I did, had a house, had a great setup, and basically let me live there for next to nothing.
Okay.
And it was one of those like Goldilocks kind of situations where I probably couldn't have done it if it wasn't for him. But I'd been doing a lot of work with Paul Reed Smith over, those 5 years or so from the time I'd left Clemson to the time I would have moved. And PRS was doing like an artist get together at Soundcheck in Nashville. They rented a room out and had a little banquet thing, food, and brought some new models out and stuff. And at the time, that was kind of the first one of those I'd ever been invited to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I invited a couple of guys I was in a band with at the time, kind of a post-hardcore type band that I was trying to do the thing again, you know, and invited those guys, and they got us all passes for it or badges, and we all went and attended. And when I was there, one of the guys I brought with me was Michael, and it was like, this stuff happens here like every day.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah. If you lived, imagine if you didn't have to drive 5.5 hours here and 5.5 hours home, and you could just kick over a rock and oil shoot out every day. I mean, that's the amazing thing about going to Nashville. And I tell this to everybody that even has ambitions of working. It's the only place in the world where if you want to work in music, you can go out for a cup of coffee and come home with a job that you didn't have that morning when you left.
Yeah.
If you want to be an actor, is it doing you a lot of good sitting in Missouri? Like, no, probably not. You probably need to go to LA, or you need to be in the city if you want to, do theater stuff, I guess. But as far as having a physical headquarters for the music business where you could go there and like beat on doors and have somebody at least see your face, even if they tell you to get lost. That place exists, and it's called Nashville.
Yeah.
So,
what's always been interesting to me about your move and your kind of being drawn to Nashville is like kind of coming out of, some heavier music
Yeah.
that you were involved with for, kind of for years on the South Carolina side of things growing up.
Yeah.
And, kind of being intrigued with Telly's and some of the Mason stuff.
Sure.
What was kind of the process in your mind that said, okay, I've been doing kind of the heavier stuff, but like going to Nashville and kind of joining in that culture or meshing the cultures. What was it? What was the draw to you to be like, this is where I want to go. I don't want to go to LA. I don't want to go to New York.
Yeah.
Kind of Nashville was the place you wanted to land,
Yeah, sure. Well, Nashville just has a Southern sensibility about it. Like it still feels like
it's sort of big, small, big city. How do we word it? Small, big city.
Exactly. Yeah. It's it was attractive to me in that it still felt normal or comfortable. It wasn't that far from home.
Yeah, it's kind of a stark difference between LA and Nashville.
Absolutely, especially if you're moving yourself,
Right.
But it was I don't know. It felt like a world away. When you're there, it's totally a transformative, different experience, but it wasn't that far away. And at the time, there's a certain aspect in all guitar players that's driven by like competition, whether that's a good thing or not. But 19 or 20, that's definitely alive and well.
Sure.
And I was interested in two things at the time. It was party trick guitar, where I wanted to be able to do anything.
Playing with your teeth or whatever.
Well, yeah. No. Maybe party trick guitar is like a bad way.
No, I'm with you. I follow you.
Nothing too corny, but if I saw somebody else do something, whether it was like Yngwie or whether it was Steve Vai or whether it was Brent, it was like, I can do that. Right. I want to know how to do that. And so I wanted to just fill my bag with all of those tricks.
Yep.
And then the other thing I would say is it is driven by accomplishments, almost in the sense of like medallions or medals, where it's like, I want to go get the stamp of approval or the seal of approval. And at the time, like I'd said, I'd been taking some lessons with Brent, and he made me feel like I was capable,
Yeah.
When I first started going there, I guess Saul Philcox had just kind of come over.
Great session guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Saul is great. He just opened a place out in Muscle Shoals, I think.
Oh,
He's
cool.
got a little spot out there. Anyway, just a small.
No, yeah, he's fantastic. But he was like, I don't know if he was crashing with Brent or if he was just set up working out of his like basement, kind of on his couch.
Yeah.
But every time I'd go over there, like Saul was there working on something, and to see a guy like that who's doing it and to be in lessons with Brent, and he made me feel like I was capable.
Yeah.
That really kind of made me feel like, hey, I could do this too. And so I wanted to get to go and say, hey, I did it. And I got the gold medal, or I got that star. And
sure.
But it also has its own, there's definitely a culture involved with that, and maybe you don't fit into that like a perfectly sized puzzle piece. And it took me a while to kind of figure out that I didn't really gel with that as perfectly as others, I should say.
Yeah, because Brent, in my personal opinion, from 1985 to 2005, he's the guy that set the bar and set the tone for every country guitar note that was played for 20 years.
Yeah.
And, it's like, this guy's not leaving room for anybody else. He's just the guy, which is, I mean, that's a great position to be in for him, obviously, and he just shaped country guitar and the way people thought about country guitar, and the like just the credit that people gave him across the world for the ability that he had, to make a guitar, not only with his left hand, the things that were happening, but I mean tone wise and the things that he was coming up with, it just set a bar for forever, in my opinion.
Oh
like
my gosh,
he's the guy that you kind of look at for the tone and the licks and all the things.
His thumbprint is on it all. You know, from here on out,
for sure.
To have a guy that did something that was so imprinted upon the whole industry. I mean, if you look at it, it's like the guy's winning like musician of the year kind of stuff as a guitar
every
player,
year,
or you know, he's got Grammys, he's got his own songwriting credits, he's doing all of this stuff as you know, I wanted to be a session player. That's what I really wanted to do.
Right.
And I thought, oh, I've got the best in the world. It's like I'm taking lessons from the guy. But also, you know, if you think about it, and that's kind of like early 2000s, home recording was not what it is now.
No. Yeah.
Like now, you can be a session player and do it out of your bedroom if you're connected enough anyways. You know, we were talking about Catlin being able to track from his home situation. He's sending stuff over. He's working, you know, he's doing it. But I didn't realize, like you said, it's kind of a king of the hill thing where like, hey, that guy made his way to the top of the mountain. Like he's not getting off the mountain unless he's dead or doesn't want to do it anymore. And nobody would want to if you've established that level of credibility and just your absolute necessity of presence to be involved in a hit song. Right. So why is he going to be like, hey, kid that's from Anderson or whatever, you know, you want to come play this instead of me today? Like maybe they'll give you, how is it, like, what is it in Talladega Nights where he's like, I was thinking maybe you could slingshot me in the first next time. you know?
Right, yeah.
It's like nobody's really trying to tee you up like that, whether they're your friend or not.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a hard lesson to realize, like, hey, I can't just move to town and be like a studio guitar player overnight. And that, I think, also is what influences a lot of people's decisions to start hitting the road or playing on the road and
grabbing a tour gig of some sort.
Finding work how you can get it, you know?
Gotcha. And, you know, this is a great kind of segue into, you know, your current tour job.
Yeah.
And, you know, for those who don't know, Rhett's on the road with Hardy or Michael or Michael Hardy, however you want to look. Famously known as Hardy.
Yeah.
But, you know, this is what's the coolest part about this thing for me is like, you know, knowing the background that you came from, you know, being in Nashville, trying to find your space and kind of, you know, Hardy played the modern popular radio game a little bit with some singles and things that was, you know, going to be popular with everybody who listens to music, everybody who listens to the radio. He put out a ton of songs that were super popular, number ones, all the things, and they sort of fit the molds of the country radio thing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Which is great and fine. And Hardy's written on a ton of songs that a lot of people probably don't even know he's a co-writer on for another artist.
Yeah.
Which is how his career really started, from the songwriting, you know, part of things. But then when his personal artistry started to kind of come out, what was revealed to the world was, dude, Hardy's kind of hardcore to the core. I mean, like he wants to rock it, and he wants to he wants heavy guitars, and he wants to put his spin on it and his lyric and his take on that, and maybe even hick it up a little bit. You know, maybe a lyric or a vocal or something that kind of reels in a little bit of his country audience. But I mean, Hardy is into some heavy sounding stuff. And what is the coolest thing to me about it is, like, you're there and like ready to step into a role for an artist like Hardy, that was really, the industry was kind of out of the box at the time. There was stylistically not a lot of things going on that Hardy was bringing to the table with that style stuff. But I love so much the fact that you put yourself in position to like be the guy that could step in and play the heavy guitar stuff that maybe you started learning some of that even back in high school. Yeah. And then now you're able to jump into that role with Hardy and, you know, play all of his tour gigs from, gosh, man, we were seeing you guys at Blind Horse. Yeah. With 1,800 people in a room, and then
if that, yeah.
And then now, like, Hardy's playing stadiums, and stuff. So just the progression of that has been really, from my viewpoint outside looking in, knowing you were from our area here in Greenville, man, it's like we've been pulling for you on the sidelines,
thanks, man.
Cheering it on.
I appreciate that a lot.
Loving the fact that you're able to be a part of such a huge, and I don't know, I'll get your take on this, but stylistically, what Hardy has done in the past couple records has not been the norm in Nashville. It's like, even from a studio recording standpoint, it's not the traditional Brent Mason type session typically, So I'd love for you to interject like your kind of thoughts and view on like how you got the Hardy gig, and then just an overall view of like, what does it look like now? Because you guys are going out and you're
Sure.
rocking stadiums and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Just give me your take on how all that came to be.
Let's see. I guess I started with Michael in the middle of 2019, kind of like right when he started. I think he had 3 or 4 other kind of guitar players at the time.
And he was probably looking for a thing, right? That he hadn't got yet.
I think at the time, a lot of it was, I would like to think so. I hope so. But I think part of it was driven also by capability.
Okay.
And also, you know how it is, man. The hang is everything. The hang is everything.
And let me stop you right there. What he means by that is like, if the headline, if the artist and the guitar player in the band can't ride in a bus for 20 hours across country and can't get along and can't have any commonalities, like, you're probably not going to keep the gig that long, But
and that's if you're lucky enough to be in a bus, if you're doing it in a
van.
airport van or whatever you call it, a 15-passenger kind of
first record, first single, you're probably in a van and a trailer. So.
Yeah. So I think a lot of it was hang oriented. I think part of it was capability and just the vibe of what he wanted to do, even though it hadn't really gone fully that direction yet.
Correct.
This is kind of the funniest part about me moving to Nashville. When I moved to town, I did like a little bit of sync work with this guy, John Darling. And that was kind of one of the only ways I was able to afford to continue to be in Nashville for a little while. But first gig I got, I was working with Lyle Lovett. I started playing with Lyle for about, I don't know, a couple of years. And he really just took me under his wing and brought me out on the road with all these like legendary players and people. And just his camp was so, to this day, is still like the coolest experience. It was such a formative, defining, amazing thing for me to get to see the music industry and the world through his lens as my introduction to kind of that level of touring.
Right.
It taught me the way things should work, and it taught me how to recognize things that are not working from a mile away too, But in doing that, Lyle's based out of Texas. So I had moved to Nashville to basically not spend a night in my own bed for like months at a time. He tours heavy, man. He tours like a real old school kind of tour, like rock tour in this day, where you go out for 9 weeks or 10 weeks or something. Not like, hey, we're going out for a long weekend and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Kind of like not really the country thing.
Yeah.
So I had already done the large band tour in the summer of 2019. I'd worked my whole year essentially with him for that point. And Hardy was just kind of starting out, and I had met Justin, the other guitarist with Hardy, really randomly at a brewery, and we kind of sized each other up. It's like, oh, I play guitar. It's like, oh yeah, I play guitar too. Oh yeah, who you play for? It's like Hardy. I'm like, never heard of him. He's like, who you work with? I'm like, Lyle Lovett, and he's like, never heard of him. But that was like kind of Lyle's thing. Like, there's a certain audience of dudes that would think that's the coolest thing in the world. And then there are people that are younger that I was like kind of part of that generation where for the most part, he's not a household name to some of these kids. man, they probably seen him on TV or know who he is, whether they know who he is or not.
Yeah.
But the Hardy thing came up because they needed a fill-in one weekend, and I was not able to do it. Like I would say, man, this probably started late summer.
Mm.
I had to say no. But also at the time, he had like that EP out. I
Yep.
think there was all of 4 songs out, and I
Yeah.
didn't really know who he was, and I wasn't really into that Nashville songwriter world
Mhm.
or like the popular radio world for that matter either. And so I, was not able to do it. They tried again. I wasn't able to do it. And they tried again when they needed somebody. And I spoke with the tour manager at the time, and he basically said, "Hey, we've got this song that Zach Wilde plays a solo on, and like we need somebody that can like rip this solo."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Wait, Zach Wilde played
Yeah.
a solo on this country guys
Yeah.
thing?" And he was like, "Well, it's not really like country. You kind of got to listen to it."
Uh-huh.
So I listened to "Turn You Down," and it's a song that he did with with Morgan Wallen's on it too. But
Yep.
Zach Wilde does like the guest solo, and it's awesome. Jacob Durrett, good friend of mine, another one of the writers. He built this he's also a metal. I used to tour with Jacob back in the day, and we didn't realize it. He played in a metal band back when I was in metal bands.
Yeah.
And we like had played the same stages together.
Yeah.
And so I found that so interesting that there was this kind of metal country thing, but I was drawn to it. And I said, I was on a trip with my wife and her family, and we were on like the one vacation I'd gotten to take that year at the beach. And I think I learned 21 songs in like 3 days.
Right.
From when they contacted me on Tuesday or whatever. And then next thing you know, I was in Philly on Friday or something playing this show. And so I learned all these songs, and a lot of it at the time was just very kind of pop country, or it seemed a lot like a cover gig, essentially, because you're playing, hey, he wrote this #1 song for somebody
Yeah.
that he doesn't sing.
Mhm.
And so we would play this almost kind of best of set.
Yeah.
And the first time I hung out with them, I realized like, man, all of these guys are metalheads
Yep.
that just decided we need a job because we're almost 30 or whatever,
Yeah.
at the time. And so we really hit it off immediately and would just listen to metal together and like joke and laugh and watch cartoons. And I mean, it was just like hanging out with your friends again. It did not feel like an artist with like the hired musician thing, which is
Yeah.
normally how that gig is going to feel.
Yeah.
That's how that gig feels 99.9% of the time to
Yeah.
anybody else. And that was very attractive to me as well, that it felt like a band, and
Nice.
and that he was interested in it being a band. Like we
Mhm.
always kind of joke about the Van Halen thing. Like, yeah, it's the lead singer's last name, but like it's the name of the band too. Like, and I still think of Hardy as a band, and we're like the 3 dudes in that band. It's
Yeah.
not like it's a revolving door. We've been there for 5 years, 6 years now,
Mhm.
and it just came together so perfectly. And I don't think there could have been another spot that I would have been as happy with in this genre of music, and making a living and playing these big shows. I mean,
Yeah.
it truly was just luck, but kind of teeing yourself up.
Sure,
You make your own luck.
For sure.
You might get three pitches your whole life.
Mhm.
And you got to just make sure you knock it out of the park when you get that one pitch. You're ready for it. You recognize when the pitch is there.
Yeah.
And so I had a great job with Lyle, and I kind of put my eggs in that basket, and we finished out the year together in 2019. And then something happened in 2020. I can't really remember what happened,
Was
but
it kind of the world stopped turning?
yeah,
Or
gosh, we were in Calgary, or on the way to Calgary or something like that, playing at this it was a casino out there, like in the middle of nowhere, not in God's country. I mean, just the Great White North,
Yeah.
And this was like the first week in March. and they were basically like, hey, everything is canceled for
Wow.
forever. And
Yep.
so we just turned around and came home, and it was like, oh my God, what am I going to do right now? I
Exactly.
just kind of switched, pivoted over, found this awesome home situation where I was stoked to be working with these guys and playing with them. And I felt like it was over before it even got started good, you know?
Yeah. And you, unfortunately, you were not the only one in that boat at that time.
Yeah.
Especially for the live touring gigs that just kind of shut down for 12 months.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, luckily he was amazing and took care of everybody over that time. I mean, and when we were able to, we did a lot of really cool kind of media, like online type performances where we would go play. Like Clear Audio had set up this amazing kind of Videodrome thing where it was like TVs everywhere, where there was like a person on the screen and you could like get a ticket to the virtual show. So we did a couple things like that, and they were able to kind of let us keep working here and there. Put a rock out that year, the record came out that year.
What a great record. That's killer record.
Yeah. And it continued to do well. And I think it kind of mounted some energy behind it. Like it was kind of waiting for us to be able to hit the road really again. And by the time kind of late fall into the year rolled around, there were certain markets that let us play. You know, like we would go down to Florida and play 3 shows or something.
Right.
You know? And you could just tell there was this like buzz around stuff where the shows were getting bigger, even if like nobody's really playing right now.
Yeah.
And luckily we were able to kind of, we definitely sat our 8 months out or whatever, but we were able to kind of work some, and they took care of us. And it was I don't know the last time I got to spend, 6 or 8 months at home, just visiting with my parents, having a drink on the porch at, 4 o'clock, watching the freaking tumbleweeds roll by or whatever. It was amazing getting to spend that time at home. But at the time,
it was an oddly horrible and sometimes amazing time period in the history of the world. And, it'll go down. It'll go down as one of the just craziest events to ever happen,
Yeah, man.
But, it did incredibly impact the music business, especially as far as the touring and the live performance side. It was just crazy what happened during that period.
Yeah.
But, it was also a time, and we actually saw some of that here where, artists were just digging in and writing like a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
To try to put themselves out in front of people, whether it's on Apple Music or if it's video, whatever. But there was a lot of I felt like there was a lot of creative things that happened in that time period that sort of, unfortunately, forced some new creativity and maybe some new songs and some new ideas and thoughts of way to approach music industry.
Yeah, I wrote a lot of cool stuff during that time, but looking back on it, I squandered that time. I mean, well, I shouldn't say that. I spent it with my family, and that's like the coolest thing in the world, especially when you're like, gosh, I guess I would have been 30 at the time, like kind of when that stuff started to hit, or about to turn 30, and I really hadn't gone home and felt like I was in like the 13th grade in a long time, like being under the same roof with my folks and my younger brother, he's a professional soccer player. He was in Australia when everything happened.
Wow.
And he was like the last plane out. Like we were like calling the embassy and like representatives and stuff, trying to make sure we could get my younger brother home.
Wow.
And so he got home, his now wife, my now wife, it was like the 6 of us all being under one roof, just hanging out every day. And it was amazing.
Sure.
It was so fun. But I wrote some cool stuff, but I laid around and just wasted time because all I thought I had was time to waste. So I wish I would have spent a lot of that differently, but I guess you spend it how you need to when you've got it.
Yeah, especially
So,
when it's an event that's never
Yeah.
happened before. You're trying to navigate through all that stuff.
yeah, there was a lot of long Xbox days where that's all I did, you know.
Gotcha.
So,
Yeah.
oh man,
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the touring life and
Sure.
what all that entails, and so one of the things that you and I had talked about a little bit was the fact that now you and your wife are living here in Greenville
Mm-hmm.
in lieu of living in Nashville,
Yeah,
which is just to reiterate your statement earlier, like I think when you're trying to build your brand and build yourself and make connections and do all the things, when you're in town in Nashville, it's kind of a vital time to sort of build, let people know who you are, let people know what you do.
mm-hmm.
You're working through doing some small jobs, you're working through doing some big jobs, and then, you don't have a job for a while.
Yeah,
But you're making that network, you're building that network,
Yeah.
so to speak there. But, kind of in 2025, in my opinion, and in the scope of what I see the music industry, there's a lot of things that you can do and be a part of. I guess the word would be remotely, or you can work from different areas of the country,
sure.
and still collectively work with a major artist or a major tour and all those kind of things. And with you guys, well, obviously, cost of living is a lot better in Greenville right now
Yeah,
than it is in Nashville. But we're also in an incredibly growing area of the country right now here where we are, and which is it's cool, and there's some negatives to it. But with you guys being able to move back to where you feel you're comfortable, you got family, but you're still going to continue to do the Hardy tour, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
So just give us a little snapshot of like kind of what that looks like,
Sure.
for maybe your particular situation.
Yeah. So now it has not always been like this, but in the last 2 years that I could say I've been back in Greenville, really, I waited until we were working in such a capacity that it made sense. If we
Mhm.
were out doing 100 shows
Yeah.
a year
Mm-hmm.
and
Bus dates.
yeah, bus dates, a lot of that stuff, which we still do bus dates, but it made a lot more sense when we started doing 40, 45 shows a year.
Yeah.
And now Michael has a child,
Mhm.
a new baby, but even before that, he kind of did this experiment. Like he loves to get to spend deer season hunting,
Kind of free time,
and
yeah.
he wants to get like his free time is important to him,
Yeah.
especially when you're so regimented and you're working yourself so much. I mean, like he takes writing very seriously.
Sure.
Writing is not something that just happens. Like that's a work day,
Yeah.
but or at least it's a work session,
Mhm.
and then he wants to go spend the rest of his time how he wants. Which I mean, we're all like that, but I think, I think, I guess it was 2 years ago. This past year, anyways, he tried to do this thing where he packed all of our work like into that kind of summer to fall touring season.
Mhm.
And it worked out awesome. It was
Yeah.
like, man, you mean I've got my life to myself and I don't really have to worry about anything for like 6 months out of the year. And then we're going to get back together, play some festivals, have a little more time off in the summer, and then kind of hit it for like a month or so, like pretty hard.
Mhm.
It's been the coolest thing in the world. And that is definitely a Goldilocks situation. I mean,
Sure.
it ain't like that for everybody,
No,
and
no.
I recognize that I'm very lucky and thankful that I can work like that. But if we're flying out to hit one market, like let's say we're going to do the Pacific Northwest, they're not going to, I mean, nobody wants to ride on the bus for 38 hours or whatever, if
Yeah.
not longer. They're going to fly us out there, and buses are going to, they're going to deadhead out there, and they're
Mhm.
going to basically be out there waiting on us.
Yep.
So we'll fly out, hop on the buses. They might pick us up from the airport. You do your kind of market of shows, fly home. And,
Mhm.
so we might do 3 shows. I fly home and I spend my 3 or 4 days at home. And then maybe we're going to be in like that kind of Las Vegas area. And so buses will just come down
Mhm.
and we'll fly back out to Vegas,
Yeah.
and then maybe we fly home. maybe if the shows are just 2 days apart, we end up staying or riding the bus out to California.
Right.
Then we do kind of Southern California, fly home again. And so it just worked out that if I'm going to be flying to gigs, I could fly out of GSP a whole lot easier than I could fly out of BNA.
Yeah.
Or driving to BNA to fly. I mean, it just was silly. So the few bus gigs that are bus dates that I have to have are normally pretty strategically laid out. Like maybe I want to swap out like 6 guitars, and I'm not going to fly with 6 guitars, or I'm gonna swap out a bunch of amps or try a different cabinet or something like that. So it gives me an opportunity to kind of drive my car out there, load the truck up with a whole bunch of stuff, swap it out, and then bring it back home to my kind of home studio practice space. And it's worked out really well this past year, and I hope it's going to work out, if not even better, this year. So, that's kind of how it's been. I mean, it's pretty low key, but like I said, I recognize that's not how everybody works. And when I had bus call every week, definitely made a lot more sense to be living in Nashville.
Sure.
Being in town. The other thing too is there are a lot of guys that, I hate to use that word grind. I think that's so corny, but there is a grind to it. And there's like a kind of the rat race element of like dudes kind of positioning for gigs. Maybe they're trading gigs around a lot and they're bouncing from one to the next. Or I'm going out with this artist this week. I'm going out with this person the next week. And they're trying to stay busy working. And I'm lucky enough now that I don't really have to stay busy, and I prefer not to be busy. I'd rather be busy doing stuff that's not work than stuff that is work. But, to want to be a studio guy, like I mentioned earlier, and then have like a pretty established road gig, now I've got a chunk of time on each side of that, like months at a time, where I can delve back into that and hunker down and do that. Whereas before, if you're going out every week and you maybe only have 2 or 3 sleepy days at home between having to leave again, I tell everybody it's 2 separate merry-go-rounds.
Yeah.
You get on one and it just keeps moving.
Right.
The other one's not going to stop for you to get on. So maybe if you hop off your road gig and go, I kind of want to do studio stuff for a little bit, that doesn't mean anybody's waiting to take you in with open arms and give you work.
Right.
And then maybe you burn out, grind your heels doing that, don't really get and go, man, I got to get back on the road. Well, guess what? There's only about 3,000 other dudes that have already tried to get your old road gig.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, why are we going to, I mean, man, you're back down the log sheet here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a delicate balance. If you want to live in town and really stay busy, you almost have to choose your
path.
Choose your path, because you can very clearly try and follow each path halfway, and instead of your grass always being green, you always got the worst shade of grass, So, anyways, that's
it's I don't envy you guys out there trying to do the thing. It's incredibly difficult, but I do believe, kind of like what we were saying earlier, when you've laid the groundwork and you put in the time and you have put in the hours and you've made the connections and people, and you treat people well, and you do a really good job. Like you show up and the songs and you crush it, and those are things that I think makes your name and your face memorable for situations. Like if God forbid something happens with your Hardy gig, like you got to be able to like go to the next thing and call on some people or whatever. But that's a part of this industry that is vital. That, in my opinion, you have to establish yourself and what you do and what you bring to the table, so that in times when someone needs to make a call, they're thinking about you. You got to make sure that you're in the forefront of their mind.
Totally. Another delicate balance is striking the right proportions of being the squeaky wheel and also like being quiet.
Correct.
And choosing your time to speak up. And I mean, that's really the thing. You gotta. I would like to think that I offer a specific brand of what I do. That somebody else maybe doesn't have.
Yeah.
And It's fun for me when I have people say like, "Oh, I didn't know you played stuff like that." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't get to break the death metal stuff out a lot, like at the country gig, or
Yeah.
like, hey, I thought of you as like this kind of jazz guitar, like Chet Atkins kind of
Yeah.
type thing, like from doing Lyle's stuff." And it's like, well, was just one of those things that I tucked in the bag from
Yep.
being 18 and wanting to tackle everything very like I conquered this. I put my flag in this
Yeah.
technique and then I moved on,
Yep.
So it's nice to be able to do a lot of those things, and then hopefully that sets you up for it. But we've got the best crew in the world, and like my best friends are in this band,
Yeah.
So I get to hang out. Like going to work doesn't feel like going to work.
Right.
It feels like going to just do something awesome with your friends.
Cool.
And that is the coolest part of it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That's very awesome. Let's let's kind of as we wrap up here, let's talk about rig rundown, okay?
Yeah.
I know that there's probably guitar players out there that are coming to see you guys play live, and they're seeing you play there's a Jackson that you're playing right now, and
a couple of those,
I know you got some Fender stuff. Just give us kind of a 30,000-foot view of like what, being on tour, what's your go-to kind of setup for this this upcoming Hardy tour?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I'm sure most guitar players are curious about, we're playing real amps. That's an important thing to us.
Right.
If you get to go play the arena or the stadium or the big place and you're just like not playing a big real amp, that's just such a shame to me. Like that's, so it's important to me. Like, yeah, it might be easier to just bring a quad Cortex or a fractal thing or a Helix or whatever. But like, I want to play the stuff that I turn around and I get the warm and fuzzies from when I look at it, and
sure, yeah.
Big old tube amps or what do that to me. So this past year I used a bunch of Mesa stuff.
Right.
Love the Mesa stuff. It was also kind of a means to an end of I needed a couple very specific things, and those amps provided that for me. I had a redundant rig where I basically had two identical Mesa Badlander amps.
Okay. And
that's kind of like the least Mesa Recto sound in Mesa. Like it's honestly more of like a Marshally kind of thing.
Yeah, right.
EL34 tubes, wonderful clean channel, real spanky.
Right.
All of that clean country sounding stuff I do is like, that's a Mesa's clean channel. That's not like a Vox or something that I've got hidden away. So I use those because all of our patch changes, like I used to have this insane pedal board. It looked like the space shuttle, but it was like taking the space shuttle out to go down the street for a gallon of milk too, because I really didn't use it for all it could do. It had this big RJM MIDI controller on it. But all of that stuff's fired by Ableton now. So I don't even have to step on a button. Like when it's time for me to do the clean thing, it goes to the clean sound.
That's a beautiful thing.
It is insane. Yeah. It's so weird. And there are times where I miss stepping on stuff. And if I really wanted to, I can turn something on or off.
Sure.
But this year, I'm not doing the redundant rig anymore. And Logan, my tech and good friend, he's the best, man. Oh my gosh, he's so awesome. But he turned me onto these amps called Wizards. And they're these very boutique kind of Marshall influenced amps, and I'm going to be using a Wizard some. I also am going to be using a Bad Cat some.
Nice. Which one do you know?
Yeah, it's this new amp they did with Mark Sampson.
Okay.
When Mark Sampson, who was like this legendary tube amp designer, he helped found Matchless Amps.
Yep.
Made the DC-30, all that stuff, like
sure.
these Vox of the gods kind of things.
Mm-hmm.
Famously left Matchless, started Bad Cat amps.
Yep.
Left Bad Cat after making the Black Cat and all these legendary amps, moved on to something else. But last year he came back to Bad Cat and made a new amp, which unfortunately is his like final amp he got to design because he passed away about a month and a half ago.
Right.
But so I am using the Bad Cat Era, which they call it the Era 1. Mark thought that was kind of a funny nod to be able, everybody talks about the Samson Era Bad Cat or the Samson Era Matchless. Well, their new amp, they just call the Era because it's Mark's real kind of stamp.
Very cool. Love that.
But yeah, so I'm using that Bad Cat Era. Bad Cats, they're so awesome, dude. And the people there are so great too. Eric and Chase and John, like Eric and Chase, like those guys are two of my best buddies, and have both played with bands that I like love and respect, and getting to work with those guys is fun enough for me. So I'm really stoked that they have something that I'm excited to bring out and use.
Very cool.
So I think this year it's going to be more of like using one amp to do one sound that I really want, and another amp to do another sound that I really want.
Okay.
And not trying to find something that has an iron in each fire. Like I'm not doing the channel switching thing. I'm using like one big loud pissed off amp for my big loud pissed off song, and then one like beautiful, clean, swirly thing to get the best sound for that. And then the other thing I'm thinking about using is this new Bogner Uberschall amp.
Right.
Which is going to do the like really insane down. We're so funny because we have 6 different tunings that we use in a night. And I think that's something I should have probably mentioned.
Right.
This gig is like everything for a guitar player, because people go, "Oh, you're switching guitars all the time. Why do you need so many guitars?"
Yeah.
Like, brother, we're in everything from standard tuning to drop A tuning, So like I need a baritone. I need something with a low A string. I need a drop C guitar. I need a drop C sharp guitar. I need a drop D guitar. And then I need standard. And then, so I have all these different things that out of necessity, I have to use this tool for this song.
Right.
But you can't really play the Princeton with a pedal in front of it for this gig, like I know that that's how a lot of people play, but like if I need a modern metal sound, I kind of need to play a metal guitar into a metal amp to get that sound for that. But then that next song, I might need to be playing a Telecaster, because there is that element of, hey, this is a Blake Shelton hit single that we're about to play, it's not the same thing. And so it's really fun to get to kind of put on those different gear hats. But this time was my like, hey, we're sparing no amp left behind, no guitar left behind. We're going to use the right thing for the job to get the most fun out of it, but the best result.
Very cool.
So I think that's the move right now.
Yeah, I love it. And, the going to see Hardy, and what's incredibly challenging to me about you guys' band is like, you got to be a chameleon, man. I mean, you have to, if you had not, taking those lessons from Brent Mason, man, you would be well. Just think about it. You'd be missing a piece of the whole Hardy picture, of what happens with his shows and with his writing and all the things. And that is what has just been incredibly intriguing to me about the whole Hardy camp, is that, I mean, he had to, and his camp had to put together a certain musician, a certain type of musician. Yeah. Not only the hang, talking about the hang, but I mean like skill set is also another thing. I mean, the drummer had to be able to play double kick pedal, but he also needed to be able to, play a country groove, and
totally
all the things that sort of came together to make that happen. Is like, man, you guys are in a special skill set was kind of needed to make it work. So
and I appreciate you saying that. I mean, the truth of that is we're like that from the top down in this organization too. And I don't know if that's something that people often get to hear. Like, in my opinion, like this may ruffle some feathers, I think we're the best band doing what we do, because I know the level of obsessive perfectionism that I have.
Yeah.
And I know that every other person that I get to work with every day also shares that, and like wants our set to be not just perfect, but to like hit you like a cannonball. I mean, in every person in every role is the best dude at their job. Like we are so lucky. Our front of house guy Turbo, he's got like Weezer trying to get him to come out with him, like he's like mixing a country, if you can call us that,
It's kind of a legend. I mean, if you don't know his name, like he's a legend dude. So.
Evan Owen, man, he's the man, and like, but he's also like one of my best friends.
Yeah,
like my tech Logan, like the dude like spent however many years wiring up like real serious consoles, like doing LA 2As or 3A, like stuff like that. So he's like a wizard at not just guitar setups, but like he's an amp tech too. Like, and like he's an amazing player. I trust his ear.
Yeah.
And it's awesome to be like, hey, what do you think of this? And but I mean, from our stage techs to our LD, our monitor guy, Sam Ferry, like the best monitor dude I have worked with anyone in like, at this point, 15 years of playing professionally. Like Sam is like a godsend. And I mean, every position in our camp is like filled out. Like our tour manager, Taylor, amazing. Like, and I know how lucky we are because not everybody gets that where everyone is rowing the same way. And it's really awesome. But I think we offer something special. And there's a part of me that is like, man, I wish it was more of like just three guys just playing music with our amp right behind us on stage. That's what everybody wants. But you have to look at this as like, this is an event. It's like a sporting event almost. Like people are going for entertainment.
It's a show.
It's a show. And the level of pyro, like our pyro guys, Rico, and the level of LD, Trev, and like all of these amazing components that go together to make our show what it is, I think it's just firing on like all cylinders all around the camp. And that's really cool. And that's the first time I've been with an organization where it truly works like that.
Right.
And that's awesome, So
very, very cool. We'll end with this. So Hardy's been teasing some new songs on social media. Are there any Easter eggs you can give us about like anything cool that's coming up? No, has there been a release date set yet?
No, there's not been a release date yet. Well, I'm sure everybody has seen the tour announcements and stuff. We're going to be in Simpsonville at the Heritage
Amphitheater, CCNB, and now I believe it's called, right?
It's going to stay that, just like the Bilo Center is the Bilo
I
Center.
know,
even if it's
we're on the same page,
And the Staples Center is always going to be the Staples Center. But
you guys are coming through the area here in Greenville.
We'll be in Greenville in September. I think you can probably expect to at least have some morsels, some pieces of a record by then that you could listen to. But
nice.
One thing I'll offer, and I don't think anybody would have any trouble with me saying this, the Mockingbird and the Crow being split down the middle and being like half a real country record and half this real rock record.
Yeah.
Everybody got their pitchforks out and was like, you should just do a rock record. you should just do a country record. Well, then we just do a rock record. And then everybody that you would have sworn asked for a rock record is like, you guys suck. You should have just done a country record. And so like,
oh man,
you just do a country record. And then all those same people, you feel like they're going to come back out and be like, you should have just done a rock record again.
Yeah.
You can't make anybody happy all of the time.
No.
So this next record is going to be a Hardy record.
Yeah.
Like whatever that means to you, he's going to do what he does, and he's going to do what made people love him and gravitate towards his writing style. And I think it's going to be like kind of the most Hardy record in that. If that means it's like a rock senior, or something where, maybe it goes into some of these more rock elements. Yeah. But maybe it also explores more of kind of old school country elements and the traditional songwriting that he loves. I think people that enjoy Hardy are going to love this record no matter what,
Nice.
That's at least what I hope. So
I love it. So everything I've heard so far, I'm pumped about sonically. From an engineering standpoint, I'm pumped sonically about what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
But Hardy's lyrics, they always hit.
Yeah.
They always hit different.
Yeah.
Well, Rhett, man, we're going to wrap everything up for today, and sincerely appreciate you coming in and spending your time. We are
thank you.
Super lucky in our upstate South Carolina area to have guys like you that live here amongst us.
Well, thank you for having me.
And coming out to hang with us here at the studio, and
I enjoyed it thoroughly. You got a wonderful spot here, and I hope I get to come. I hope I get to come be a part of something or hang out with you again.
Well, listen, we're gonna have to talk about how we can make that happen.
Cool.
But thanks again once again for coming in to hang with us. Thank you guys for tuning in on the Studio 101 podcast, and we will see you next time.